Hello, my name is Dr. Tim Curtis, and I've spent my entire adult life trying to change the world for the better. My research and practice is in how to persuade people and organizations to improve the ecological and social environment. My first job started with the decommissioning of the Brent Spa, an offshore oil storage platform which, on the back of the 1992 Rio Earth Summit that started COP, caused international controversy. It was an example of rational planning gone wrong. I also worked for the government of Azerbaijan in the oil-rich Caspian Sea region, where the environmental protection standards were amongst the most strict in the world, but nobody, including the government, could make them work. I became an environmental lawyer and management consultant, working on project after project that demanded innovative solutions to be invented, but then implemented. This is where my life's passion started. It's relatively easy for leaders to agree on an environmental protection policy, whether it relates to climate change, waste minimization, or even health and well-being outcomes. But it's fiendishly difficult to implement the decisions. It's not sufficient to sign a policy or a new law and say, make it so. Time and again we hear the same promises and no action, because that's the action part is wickedly difficult. It seems so often to be left to heroically talented individuals to take up these promises and somehow magically make them work. Everything from negotiating a good outcome in a local neighbourhood to huge global problems. We hope for heroes who will mysteriously craft our promises and policies into viable and effective social environmental innovation. This process is what we academics call bricolage, bringing together bits of other people's resources, money and talent to make something new. Relying on these heroes, however, is insufficient. There are not enough of them to go around. There are too many social and environmental problems to tackle, and we don't know whether they are good at what they do or just charismatic, but ultimately fail. What we need is for everyone to be involved in solving social and environmental problems, for everyone to be a change maker. Inspired by the unique approach to systems thinking created by Peter Checkland of Lancaster University and the systems thinking team at Open University, I started tackling this problem. I picked up on the skills for sustainable communities developed by Peter Egan in 2004, helping the Academy of Sustainable Communities to train leaders and practitioners in developing those skills. But at the same time, there was no way of establishing how good any of the practitioners were at these skills, and very little to help them with the implementation of those ideas. I then spent 7 years working with the social and community development students here at University of Northampton, teaching them about sustainable communities whilst discussing and debating the challenge of changing entire neighbourhoods for the better. This is what we now call place management or place leadership. 10 years ago, I met a senior police officer, Superintendent Richard James, who wanted to improve the public safety outcomes in his command at a time when there was massive cuts to public spending. He and I have continued to collaborate and founded intensive engagement from our research. Intensive engagement provides a systematic framework for understanding problems, designing solutions for them with the people who most experience the problems, and developing viable implementation plans. It works as a series of 8 sectors of skills and activities, and now we can demonstrate that progress of the implementation team makes across all of the 8 essential segments. In this way, we can train the team and verify the skills and experience they have, something that is unique to what we do. My research has demonstrated how this 8-segment model works. We know a lot now, after a decade of research and implementing over 14 projects across the UK, about what makes implementation difficult and what can be done about it. Research is making significant impact in people's lives right now. The next step will be to extend what we have learned in neighbourhood safety and policing back to the wider Sustainable Communities Challenge, currently focused on climate change, but also on all the human and ecological problems that are going to be caused by that climate change. Intensive engagement is, however, focused on human flourishing and improvement, not just mitigating negative results and effects. The intensive engagement research builds on Pawson and Tilley's context mechanism outcome model. We have a sense of what the outcomes we want from climate change, for example, a reduction of CO2 into the atmosphere. But that isn't the only outcome that is important. Doing so without plunging the global economy into crisis and whilst providing some of the benefits of development to the poorest and most vulnerable communities is also desirable. What we tend to do, however, is seek universal solutions that work everywhere, but that is not realistic and is where failures of implementation happen. We need to understand the contexts of the proposed change too, the uniqueness of place. We then need to connect the context to outcomes with mechanisms in between. These are vitally important to ensure that all the conditions and triggers that might be present in a local context are in place, and where they're not, make sure that something is done to address that. Contexts connect to different outcomes in a complex web of different mechanisms, and the right mechanisms have to be in place and ready to be triggered, or the innovative project will not work. What works in Northampton will not work as well in Manchester. A solution designed for Mumbai will not work as well in Michigan. So we need to understand the differences in the place. What is desirable social environmental outcome in Michigan will also be subtly different in Mumbai, so we need to be sensitive to variations in outcomes. Understanding these two dynamics, the complex mechanisms that connect the two, are even more important. In this way, the things I've learned in public safety isn't limited to policing neighbourhoods, but can be applied in a variety of settings, including climate change and its implications.